Welcome to the Mission Advancement Podcast, where we talk about the importance of human connection, generosity, and leadership, so that mission-minded leaders will be inspired to learn and grow. Well, welcome back to part 2 with Nicole Gann. This
sequel.
is a sequel episode. That's right, bonus episode. So if you didn't listen to the first one, I highly encourage you to go back. We're not going to repeat Nicole's history and journey with Juliette Fowler Communities, but she's got a great story. And our first episode, we had so much to talk about that we decided to do a sequel part 2. So here we are, also with my colleague Lacey Young from the Mission Advancement team.
Hello.
Lacey's gonna dive into our part 2 kind of topics that we segued into in part 1. So Lacey, take it away.
Well, thank you. When we talked before about what it means to lead in times of change, or what it means to be kind and clear as a leader and things like that, I can't help but think of what Juliet would have done back in 1892.
Yeah. Or even before.
Or before, when she was dreaming of this,
When she was dreaming of this.
She had this land and her family, and she was going through turmoil that we could never understand in today's day and age, but she decided to go out boldly and say, here's what I want to do because I want to give back to my community. And I know we've used this phrase before of be a Juliet.
Yeah.
And you are a Juliet of what does that look like? And I think when we think of as a leader to be a Juliet, how are you able to say, I'm going to step up and I'm going to do something completely different, and I'm going to be able to say, who knows if this is going to work, but for the next 135 years of your organization, you have to be the Juliet. So who are some Juliets in your life that you have looked to of, hey, they've done that well? Because change is hard. And I can't imagine what that was like for her. I can't imagine what it's been like for you. But who do you look to for inspiration and change?
Oh, that's a good question.
Thank you.
You know, I first and foremost probably have to think of my mom. You know, my mom, I always describe my relationship with her as magic and madness. She was diagnosed bipolar. She had me when she was 20, right? And like many young mothers, has no idea what they're going to do with this child. But, you know, again, this is 1960s, and you couldn't talk about mental illness. And she had to figure it out in isolation with a new baby. My dad traveled, you know, the majority of his career, wasn't, you know, always home. And then when I think about what she had to overcome at that time of her life and how she persevered and how she raised my sister and I like to think of us as functioning, successful adults, but I guess talk to my mom on that one. But, you know, but then seeing her go through her life and overcoming, you know, hardships. Like, I didn't know that we were poor. Until I got into my 30s, and my mom would say she had to roll coins, or she picked up, you know, bottles and cans on the side of the road while we were at school. I just thought my mom was a stay-at-home mom like everybody else is at the time. And so when I think of those stories, my mom and my dad as well have been the best examples for me, because they've always adapted to whatever the needs of their family were without complaint. No grandiose, I can't believe we're actually having to feed these children, they need to quit eating so much kind of thing, you know, but we always had what we needed, right? And you don't appreciate what that requires until you're older yourself. And so, you know, I'm sure there's lots of other people that I could name, but I think I could leave it there and just say my mom and my dad, you know, were those best examples of you just overcome and you move forward. That's the big lesson that I think I take from their life. You're just always moving forward. You don't stay stuck. You figure it out.
Right. That's the mission of Fowler. You have to be moving forward. Because as life changed for Juliet and her family, and what it meant to be a woman in the early, you know, 1900s, to start an organization and to go out and say, I'm going to do this. How many times do you think she heard no?
Oh, my gosh.
Right. Can you imagine?
I say this all the time. Yeah. I mean, her and her sister both, because I credit her sister as our second visionary, right? Because Juliet has an untimely death because penicillin hadn't been created at the time, right? And her sister has to fulfill her legacy. But again, this was the 1800s. When we're talking about the Me Too movement just happened in the 2000s, people. Like, I need us to take a trip back in time. And if we think it's been hard hard, for us as female leaders. Just imagine a female showing up saying, hey, I thought that we're going to start this home for orphans in our neighborhood. And, not everybody has family to take care of them when they're old. So we're going to build a house for them too. And they're going to live together. We're going to have like a farm. And the elders are going to help take care of the orphans. And the orphans are going to do some chores and help the elders. I can't imagine everybody was like, that's the best idea I've heard today, ma'am.
Yeah.
Like, sign me up, please.
Or like you're qualified to do it.
Yeah.
To actually.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could go on and on about milestones and hardships that they had to overcome.
Yeah.
But again, it's a story of perseverance. And the reality is if you believe you can do it or you believe you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
So it's only dependent upon the mindset you adopt. Yeah. And I believe that Juliet and her sister Sarah believed that they could, and so they did, and so we still do today.
Right. Yeah. I think so much because they thought of others before themselves a lot of the time, and so, I mean, they were being generous back then and defining what generosity could look like on this plot of land that now you guys have been on for hundreds of years, where you've grown and adapted. So tell me a little bit about what that has looked like of leading with generosity with your board over a generational shift. You mentioned this before. You've had board members who have been on the board for decades, and that's maybe how it used to be. And now there's someone who says, oh, I'd like to be on a board, or we give differently. Our parents gave differently. What does that look like for you as a leader in this generational shift with leading with generosity?
Yeah. Well, can I talk first about the generosity of kind of the board and how they show up in this era of my leadership? But I want to thank them for trust. Like, that's been very generous on their part. And let's think about this for a second. Fowler's, we've said it a couple of times, 135 years old. That's a legacy organization, okay? But I want us to also think about how legacy can be a cage if we're unwilling to adapt. If legacy is so important to you that you have to hold on to everything that was because you think it's the only way that identifies you, it becomes a cage. And we know we do not thrive in cages, right? So in the terms of organizations, we're setting ourselves up for a decline and maybe extinction. But our board, I think, has expressed and exhibited so much generosity in belief that we could be different and still hold on to our heritage, right? We're never going to lose sight of Juliet or Sarah or the programs that came before. And I always like to believe that we work really hard to honor them for what they were in the time that they served, right? You can always look back as a leader and say, I do not even know why these people made this decision. Like, this is crazy. Why do we have this entrance to this building here? But what I'll tell you as a leader, there was absolutely a reason. And somebody 25 years from now are going to question decisions that I would be happy to defend now. But it's going to seem, illogical to them. But our board and their generosity of belief has allowed us to adapt and evolve. And they've given me that trust and that commitment to do the heavy lifting, because Fowler's been a heavy lift in the time that I've been there, because we've changed a lot in a short period of time. Because they want the mission to thrive, not just survive, right?
Right.
And you can do both. You can adapt, and you can always honor your heritage. You can bring it along with you. You just adapt it, and it becomes part of the story of now. And that's how I think that we evolved. And so I think when you ask me that question on generosity, I think of the generosity of our board. I think the same thing for our donors. I think the same thing for the people that work with us. They're trusting us so explicitly to fulfill a mission. And they have an idea of how they think that's going to get fulfilled. It's whatever their entry point is into the organization. Our goal as a leader is to keep them through all those iterations so that they still believe, yep, this is the next best way now to fulfill this mission. So.
Yeah.
But I want to follow up on one thing you said, because I know a little bit about the demographic of your board, to know that you've got some board members who are in their 70s, 80s,
90s.
I was going to say, are we in the 90s now?
Yeah.
And thinking about, adapting to change and decades of service on a board, I mean, how do you see the difference in some of those long-term board members who have come along with you and their ability to adapt, even in maybe a generation where that's surprising? I think all of us as we age, right, are more resistant to change.
Sure.
We could give lots of examples of that, but you have clearly had some long-term board members that have taken the journey and been able and willing to shift. And any observations about how you've been able to work with that generation of board member, and then let's transition to the new generation of board member and how you're doing that.
I think most of them have made that shift. We've had board members that have, left maybe, and I look at it this way, they're just not aligned with the changes or the work that's needing to be done now. Again, nothing went wrong. People are going to be aligned, they're going to fall out of alignment, that's okay. Most of our board members have been able to make that shift. And candidly speaking, some of them have expressed being exhausted, right? You don't necessarily get to a place in your life where you want to be doing a full-time job for free because it's volunteer service, right? And I remember talking to a prospective board member and I said, hey, you've retired now. I think it's a good time for you to come on the Fowler board. And he's like, absolutely not, Nicole, because I know how much work you put on them. I was like, well, I'm trying to slow it down, but
you're trying.
Okay,
Guilty.
maybe as built. But I think that our board, what's the beauty of our board, because it's the best board that I've ever been associated with, really, in all of its iterations for my whole 15 years, it really, they're progressive. They are so single-mindedly committed to the mission, and they even recognize that we have got to start evolving. So we've had a board strategy for a long time where we've looked at skill set, we've looked at how we're going to recruit members, we've looked at the size, right? We've looked at all of those different iterations. And this is such a relevant topic of conversation for us now because I have just had a meeting with my board chair and former chair about bench strength. And it's not too unusual for boards to talk to the leader about bench strength internally, like, Nicole, who's going to be your successor? Who's the successor for the next level down, right? That's pretty common for them to talk about. But just as an example of how progressive my board is, they recognize that is a discussion for them to have as well. Bench strength, right? Yeah. Because for the ones that are tired after serving 20 years, 30 years, it's not that they love the mission any less. It's just they want to do less, but they feel so strongly about it, like, who can I leave care in the hands of that next person? Like, who is that? So it's this bigger awareness now of how they have to evolve. And one of our discussions, and I'll be curious to see how this plays out on y'all's future episodes, because I bet it's going to be a common theme, is what does that new board member look like? And so here's a perfect story. If you come onto my board, it's a 3-year term. Now, you can have unlimited terms, and I'm welcome to the universe to give you as many terms as you would like to find meaningful. There you go. And if you go into executive leadership, think of it just like secretary, treasurer, vice chair, chair. Most organizations, they will run their leadership through that pipeline, right? Because they're learning the organization, they're getting that foundation so they feel comfortable sitting in that chair spot, okay? Well, in Fowler, to do that, you would have to be committing to at least 12 or 15 years. Because unless you're going to come into an executive role on term 1, which is 3 years, you're going to serve a term, and then you're going to come into one of those seats, probably not the president. Right? So at minimum, you're kind of now on the 12-year track if you went secretary, treasurer, vice chair, chair. Previous chair, don't even talk to me about that, but that's like a bonus 3 years. Now, so if I'm trying to talk to somebody to say, like, Jennifer, I'd like you to serve on my board, and I think you would make a great board chair in the future, and you say, well, what does that look like? And I say, I don't know, 12 or 15 years, and you're like, that's something I got to really sit back and think of. So I'm at that stage now with my board to say, how do we create meaningful service in ways that are less traditional? And I got to go back to the progressiveness of the members of my board, because one of them was like, well, I guess someone could come in and just go to the executive committee. Like, they're open to that. This is where I'm like, hold up.
Yeah.
Fowler's a little bit more complex. That makes me nervous. I don't know what's happening.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
you know, then you have a role reversal,
Yeah.
right? But I think this is now going to become a conversation for mission-based organizations who are requiring volunteer board leadership. In our industry, in the senior living industry, there's a big debate on whether or not you should pay board members or whether or not they should stay volunteers.
Interesting.
And so a lot of faith-based organizations that have been around more than 75 years, they can get real entrenched on this to say you absolutely cannot pay them. And others are saying this is just the reality of the world we live in. And if we want to get talent to lead us forward strategically, we're going to have some kind of payment. So I think this is going to be an ongoing topic.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about change and board leadership and how people adapt and deal with that, a lot of times people don't mind asking the question, hey, why do you like our organization? Or why do you give? And they like hearing the positive feedback. But what also happens when you ask that question? You're going to learn what they don't like about you.
Of course.
And so I think when you're a leader and you ask that question or you're adapting to things that have changed, you have to learn from, well, I love your mission, but I don't like the way you guys communicate with me. I like your mission, but... And so it's hard to get that feedback. And I think that's a thing that boards have to take. And that's where they can shift to say, okay, here's where we're going to make a change because we got this feedback. A lot of times they only want to take the positive because we're changing because we're growing. We're changing because, you know, we've added a new building and we have 144 new apartments.
Yeah.
But what if the change has to become something that you're having to come back on because you heard feedback you didn't like? So I think it's a hard place for leaders to be. And I think those board members who have been there for 15, 20 years, they're like, well, we've seen it all. Yeah. We can handle this. And sometimes newer board members don't want to hear that negative feedback.
Yeah.
So I think that's a hard tension. So I know we're talking about like tension with leadership and tension with boards. Is there anything recently, a challenge that you have seen where you've had to kind of navigate that with your board of that tension of change? Because
Sure.
they're your boss.
They are my boss.
Right? She's my boss. I mean, this is hard. You know, it's how do you do that?
Delicately. I mean, it is a dance, right? Because they are hiring you to be the subject matter expert, if you will. Because none of them are wanting to run a senior living, intergenerational children and youth service organization. They don't want to do that. They want you there. And yes, they are the boss of you, right? So it's a, dynamic tension that's always existing because they're wanting you to give your expertise, but then they might want to say, hey, step back, ma'am. But I say that because that's the truth. I remember when I approached them about closing our skilled nursing facility, and this is something that had been part of the organization for an extremely long time, probably as long as SNFs, skilled nursing facilities, had been around.
SNFs, I'm sorry.
Skilled nursing facilities, what most people associate with a nursing home.
Okay.
Okay. And ours was 100% Medicaid.
Okay.
Okay. And it established, that mission outreach, which again, it's very costly to provide that for privately. So this was a big thing, right? But it was, costing us millions of dollars a year in the red, to run it. So it just was not sustainable. So again, I go back to that cage. You can stay in that legacy service line and be in that cage and wither and decline, and eventually it's no more. Or you can get out of the cage and say, we can't do this anymore, but there are other ways that we can serve the mission in elders. And that was a long conversation of people who were against that and very entrenched, and people who accepted it initially. I had apprehensions because you never want to lead your board, to make a decision that then impacts your mission. So that's one that comes to mind. And I think most recently we've done a campus expansion, right? And with that expansion, we're going to be bringing early childhood development for income qualified children in a preschool environment, right? We can all agree that helping kids at the beginning of their life is a lot better than trying to resolve problems in their mid-stage of their life. And we're also bringing on some new apartments that are going to be for elders that are going to be what we call market rate. right? And there's been tension on, should we build something nice that people want to pay a higher rate for, right? And has Fowler changed? And if there's a thing that makes my eyes, melt out of my skull, is hearing that Fowler's changed, because it didn't change. There are lots of not-for-profits who have service lines that make money so that it feeds service lines that have no money.
Right.
There's not a children or youth program in the Fowler portfolio that we get any kind of reimbursement from the government, from an agency, from the children that utilize those services. It's all 100% benevolence. But going back to sustainability, to do that, we have to be good stewards of all of our resources. And we have a very diverse community where we have the haves and the have-nots that can live with us. And that's an important, factor. So our mission didn't change. It's just evolved.
Yes.
Because we're out of the cage.
Yes. So
And
I
we're
like this
evolving.
legacy cage idea.
Yeah.
I'm gonna borrow that, Nicole. But I want to apply it back to your board, because I don't want to get away from the board, because I do think this is an issue in the nonprofit sector. We hear a lot about, different generations, how they give, how they serve, and younger people aren't giving in the same way, and how is the nonprofit space going to survive? I think that's a bit gloom and doom. I think, there's generous people in every generation, and maybe how they think and how they want to be communicated with looks different. But on the board service, is the 3-year board term, 12, 15-year trajectory that a lot of nonprofits could probably relate with, is that a legacy cage? I mean, is the whole idea of how we ask people to commit for these decades-long terms just an idea that we as leaders need to be willing to let go of in the interest of a solid, qualified board?
I absolutely believe it is. And I'm coming to peace with me letting go. And I'll tell you what my limiting belief was. Fowler is an organization that has a lot of complex operating environments. We have HUD, we have low-income housing tax credit, we have assisted livings, we have a community-based assisted living, children and youth, early childhood development, all governed by some type of regulatory agency, all governed by some, rules of engagement, right? Most businesses, especially in mission businesses, they might have one or two, right? Or they're so large that the scale that you can have people focus on that. And I've always thought historically, up until just recently, that people needed to be on our board at probably at minimum 3 years just to wrap their heads around the acronyms that we use and what we're doing, right? And so to your point, I'm having to step back now and say, if I'm only going to have a board member for a term or 2 terms, if 2 terms becomes my sweet spot, and that's 6 years based on our current bylaws, how do I package that? How do I sell that? What does the staff have to do to augment that, right? How do we make a better selection on a board member that maybe gets up to speed faster and quicker? How do we gauge alignment so that we can hit the ground running and get the most out of that? And is a 3-year term, is that the sweet spot? Is it a 2-year term? I mean, our boards and their governance, they write the bylaws, they revise the bylaws. So I think if we can imagine it, then, we can build it, right? And see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then we'll pivot and revise them again. But you're asking the question that I think we are struggling with, right? Not struggling in a bad way, but just tossing around in our head, like, what does that look like? Because, like, just this year alone, I have 12 members of a 23-member board that have expiring terms.
Wow.
So
12?
12. So if they did not plan to renew a term, let's just say hypothetically, all 12 of them were like, we've done our service, it's been fun, we wish you nothing but the best, we'll be rooting for you, but then they left, I'd be out of compliance with the size of board, right? And think of all that institutional knowledge that goes out. So I think board strategy becomes such a critical component of not only what are your term limits, how many terms, what do they need to know from an onboarding standpoint. We'll have to be a lot better at onboarding boards in our environment if I'm going to get over my complexity hurdles. But it's also going to be like, how do you have the right size board, right? What are other ways that you can build pipeline? Like, could they serve on this committee and not be a board member so that you're grooming them for that next? Board strategy, I think, is going to be the thing that I probably have to focus more so in the latter part of my career rather than the service line strategy, if that makes sense. Because it's like I know those things now. I can, flex to those pretty autonomously. But board strategy now, I think, is going to be the big hot button to be thinking about. Not just for me, but for boards. Because, I mean, if you think about it, that's their job as a board, right? They're building their own bench strength. I am just, making recommendations or offering suggestions and partnering along. But that's why I love the conversations my board's happening right now.
What is the relationship with your board chair or your past chair and your executive committee? I mean, that's a really intimate relationship and reciprocal of staff and volunteer leadership. What does that look like today?
It's great. I love them.
Yeah. It helps when you like each other.
Both.
Yes.
But, my first board chair, I became CEO in 2018, so we just had like a couple of good years before the pandemic hit. And then it was pandemonium, and we ended up changing our bylaws so he could stay longer. Not only because of the pandemic, but we were also doing a very complex capital deal with the low-income housing tax credit. And so, I mean, he traveled to places to say, hey, let's go look at this because I think we can do that. And he went there willingly, and he had the skill set needed at that time. My current board chair has lived through this campus development, lived through this tension of change that, we've been talking about, and knows our neighborhood so well and is so committed to Fowler and just service in general. And he's been a different board leader for me because he's willing to say, Nicole, calm down. Okay? Just calm down.
Right.
Okay? No. I mean, but with both of them, I had that, unspoken language. And trust. And trust. And I hope I can say for them that they trust me. I certainly can say that I trusted them both implicitly, and I learned a significant amount from both of them and continue to do so, and lessons that have been so valuable in my success. Because leading a not-for-profit, I think, is a lonely job. Probably being a CEO, period, is a lonely job. You can feel so isolated. You can get in your head so much about who likes me, who doesn't like me. And most of the decisions that I make probably do not warrant me popularity votes. And there's a part of me that wants to go on a campaign that says, this is why I did it. This is what you need to know. And if this didn't happen, lives would have been lost. And so quit hating on me so hard. And you just can't do that. You don't have the luxury. And my relationship with them has been validating in the sense that they're the ones that are closest to me that can say, Nicole, you are doing a good job. Nicole, it's not as bad as you think it is. Let's just pause a minute and reflect back. And I think that's true for most of the people on my executive committee as well. And if I didn't have that, I just think that would just be so hard and so sad because you give so much and you work so hard in this environment. And you do need somebody occasionally to say, good job, ma'am. Right?
Right. Again, I'm going to go back to what did that look like in 1892 for Juliet. If people said, good job, ma'am, you're doing it. Way to go. So my encouragement to everyone is to try to be a Juliet. Try to do that. Take that leap. It takes courage. It takes trust in your leadership and your partners. It takes vulnerability. It takes all the things that we've been talking about. So try it. Let's all be a Juliet.
So closing question for you, Nicole, and this is a new one. But I love this question when I hear it from others. What advice would you give to your younger self? As I think about the young professionals out there that want to be Nicole Gann, and they think that your job is the coolest job in town, they love your mission, and they think sitting in your seat someday would be their dream. What advice do you give to the young professional or yourself as a young professional that's dreaming of that, and what would you say?
Well, let me break this down into two parts. Okay, if I was talking to my younger self, Nicole, I would tell her the same thing that my board chair tells me. calm down, ma'am, okay? It's going to work out. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen in the way that you think it's going to happen, but it's going to be beautiful, and you're going to be okay. And I would also say you're going to be safe, right? You don't have to expect the worst or have 18 contingency plans because it's going to work out.
Yeah.
So just calm down, okay?
All right.
If I was talking to young professionals, which I frequently do, I would say pay attention and don't mistake things looking easy as being easy. I think that there are a lot of leaders, especially the ones that I admire or that I think are good leaders, that make stuff look really easy. And I think about my own trajectory, because I came up in the time that I wanted the corner office, you know, you wanted all these things that were society's way of saying this was a prestige, right?
Status.
You get your first little cubicle. You have arrived.
That's right.
Okay, like it's my private domain.
Put up your
Doesn't have a
pictures.
door or a
Yep.
ceiling, but it's mine.
yours.
And then you move into that office, and it's a big deal. And my first office didn't even have a window, and I still did cartwheels. But when you get to the corner office, like that was big doings.
Right.
Like people knew that you were something, right?
Right.
And when I think about wanting it so bad and having no framework of the turmoil, the pain, the sweat, the just
Stuff.
dire circumstances of what it would take to stay there or be there, that's what you don't know. You see a facade,
Right.
And you think, I've talked to people because I facilitate the Texas leadership in our association. So I have the privilege of talking to a lot of emerging leaders, right? And they're like, "You're so fun." And I am. Okay, so let's say that.
Agreed.
But my job is not always fun, right? And they're not seeing the times when I am sitting in my car with my head on my steering wheel, literally crying because I don't know if the next decision I make during a pandemic is going to cost people lives.
Right.
Like, I don't know that. Okay? And I'm sitting there because that's the only place that I can be.
Yeah.
They don't know what it's like to be preparing to go into a board meeting to say, hey, we had a problem and it's going to cost this organization probably $750,000, and this is going to now change the trajectory of services that we can provide or do. They don't know that because what they see is fun, Nicole, right?
Right.
Like, we're going to figure it out. We're going to make it fun. Because that's what I project, right? So I would say to that young up-and-comer, come and get it. Come and get it. It's like the King of the Mountain game. Like, I look forward to you coming and getting me off the mountain because eventually I want to be in retirement too, doing something else, right? Like, come for me. But come with an awareness that it's not just the facade. There's a lot of things happening under the surface that are going to test your grit, test your resilience, test your sanity, test your endurance, right? Test your why you think you even want to like people. That's just the truth. So that's what I would tell them.
There we go. I love it.
Well, and with that inspiration,
I'm sorry, but it's super fun. I mean,
great.
because listen, I mean, I get to, make a lot of stuff up, and, I
a good
would
time.
rather be the boss of others than, not. I mean, that's true too.
I love it.
well, it's leadership is a journey.
Yeah, leadership
right?
is a journey.
And as we've said in other episodes, none of us have it figured out.
No.
And that's one theme that I really hope will be consistent in this podcast and this journey, is that people will feel heard, they will feel understood, they will feel not alone. Because regardless of whether you're at the top of an org chart or you're managing one person or a small department or whatever, nobody has it figured out. And
They don't.
the more you can ask questions and be curious and learn and be humble and be vulnerable and all of that, I think the better all of us can be at training others and mentoring and helping people rise up into really fantastic future leaders.
Well, can I say this? I mean,
Yes.
thank you to both for creating this forum because you're exactly right. It's better to know you're in a community of people because you can feel isolated, and you're also hitting that thing that I love. It's like all boats rise with the tide. Right? Like, you can be great, you can be great, I can be great. We have to believe in the power of abundance. And the more that we can lean in and share our stories, the good and the not so good, the more we're giving other people permission to do that. But we're also helping them not set themselves up for a nervous breakdown.
Right.
Like, that's important.
Right.
Like, we came up through the school of hard knocks, but I don't necessarily want everybody to have to go to that school. Right. And community, I think, is a way out of that. So thank you both for the time and all the people behind the scenes that put this together, because I think it really is meaningful.
Thank you for joining us. This has been so fun.
Yes.
Maybe there's a part 3 in the future.
Maybe there's a part 3. No.
I will come back for all the parts.
For all the parts. Yes.
All the parts that you will have me.
Thank you for your generosity of time. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Mission Advancement Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you'll be notified of future episodes. You can also find out more info at missionadvancement.com or on social channels. Thanks again for listening.